On today's episode, we're going to be diving into mental health. So on Miss Chester, I often talk about how important mental health is and how everything around me affects my mental health. And I just wanted to give a background look into my life and my mental health, and perhaps it can help and inspire you to take care of your mental health. I did a poll a few weeks ago on Miss Chester. You can follow me on Miss Chester at ms.chester_NJ. And I really wanted to hear about what you guys wanted me to talk about. And one of the options was my mental health journey. Because I talk about a lot about mental health, how it's super important to see a doctor, psychiatrist if you need to, therapist, anything like that. And so I really wanted to kind of talk to you about my journey. It goes all the way back to when I was a child, all the way up to today, which is interesting because I knew that doing this podcast, so we record every 2 weeks, and I knew that at some point I would be feeling off, I'd be feeling weird, I'd be feeling depressed or anxious, and I really want to talk about that when it happens. So today I am feeling, a little bit off, a little bit depressed, because full transparency, I have been taking over-the-counter sleeping pills, I guess you would say. So I take one every night. I have for years. And for some reason, I ran out of them. So now I always trigger myself into let's just not take them anymore. So I'm getting off of them, and I feel it right at the base of my skull that I just feel off, because obviously it was a chemical. A lot of people take melatonin. I'm sure it was something on the lines of that. But I just feel off today. There's no certain reason. It's just something in my brain and my chemicals. So I feel depressed. And just so you know, it's okay to feel anxious or sad or depressed for no reason at all. This is just a reminder to you. And I think it's also a reminder that for women, mine is very hormonal and cycle based. So I'm getting my period in a week. So I'm probably just PMSing as well. And so men, so you know that, just stay away from them when they're like this. But, and when they're ovulating, they'll be very happy, and that's a good time to be around them. So I really just wanted to take today to talk about, again, my mental health journey. So as I'm growing up and I'm learning more and more about my mental health, and looking into it a little bit more and talking to people like Stacy, who was on our podcast. So she's a trauma coach, and a lot of the things that happen to us when we're kids or anything in life really affect our mental health and how we perceive different things. So when I look back, when I was a child going, first, second, third grade, I would actually dry heave a lot before school. I would never really throw anything up. It would just be an anxiety-producing dry heave because I was just a very anxious child. And why? I don't know why I was. It's just kind of who I was or who I am. So when I look back, that's really where it all started for me. And I was anxious and I have depression for a long time when I really look back in my life. So I think when you really look back and assess your life and look at your childhood and what you were like in college, I was very anxious. In high school, I was anxious. I've just been anxious forever, and I'm still anxious today, but I can control it a little bit better. And I am on medication, which we'll talk about that. So I was anxious forever. I would try everything from eating healthy, from doing yoga, getting enough sleep, working out a lot, all these things. Because I was always so afraid to go to the doctor and for them to say, you should be on medication. I thought of it as failing. Why couldn't I just feel good by myself? Why couldn't I just do it myself by eating well, doing yoga, all these things? And so fast forward to being diagnosed with cancer when I was 28. When I was diagnosed, they gave me Ativan to be taken. I don't know if it was subscribed every night or prescribed every night. They said it was good for you to use for nausea. But it was a intense, psychotropic. And so I would take that every night to go to sleep. And I went to sleep. I slept very well. And of course, during that time, I was very anxious. I'm sure I was depressed, all that kind of stuff, but I kind of blacked it out. So sleep was super important, especially to heal. So I understood why I was given it. But as I did my research, and I'm a big researcher, I want to see how things affect you, all that kind of stuff. It's a very hard drug to get off of because it can cause depression because you're doing something to your brain. So that chemical is changing, all that kind of stuff. So I took that during my whole treatment. And then after I did radiation, after I did all of my surgeries, everything like that, I really wanted to talk about how I should be tapering off of Ativan, and especially because they weren't going to keep prescribing it for me if I didn't really need it. So of course I got anxious about that, making sure that I was, taken off of it and didn't fall into a deep depression. But in the meantime, I fell into a depression because after you go to chemotherapy and you are watched like a hawk by all these doctors, your blood is taken all the time, people are really kind of obsessed with you because they want to make sure that you don't die, number one, and they just really need to monitor you all the time. And maybe some people have felt this as well who have gone through treatment. I felt like after all of my treatments and after I did, everything from chemotherapy, double mastectomy, all that kind of stuff, I felt like I kind of fell off of the cliff of care. And I'm not saying, Memorial Sloan Kettering is one of the best places, but I felt like I was kind of in a transition phase where my primary care didn't necessarily want to see me because I was high risk. And then the oncologists were, on to their next patient who were at higher risk than I was. And I really felt like I just fell off a cliff and I was floating somewhere by myself. I had a cold one time. My PCP didn't want to see me. They said, see your oncologist. The oncologist was, nothing was really related to cancer. So I eventually had to call them and just hysterically cry in order for someone to see me to prescribe who knows what. And that's when they said that I should see the psychiatrist. So after that, I, saw the psychiatrist and I talked to her about how it was super important for me to come off of Ativan in a controlled manner because I already was depressed. I already had anxiety and I didn't want to fall into this, hole, I guess, a deeper hole of anxiety and depression. And so that's when she gave me Lexapro. So I started on Lexapro to help with tapering off of the Ativan, and I could have probably used it anyway, and I'm sure that she saw that. So I started on Lexapro, I tapered off of Ativan, and then in the first 6 months, I gained 20 pounds like that, like so quickly, and that is a side effect that happens to some people, not all people. And I hadn't changed a thing, how much I was eating, how much I was working out. I just gained 20 pounds. So we gave it another month. And then after that, I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't be gaining this weight. And then I changed to Effexor, which I have been on for probably 3 to 4 years at this point. And it works really well for me. And I'm not saying that I don't have days where I am anxious or depressed. It helps bring that, the change down. Like I could have been in my bed for days and then I would come out of that hole and then I would go back into it. So it really just brings that the huge change of being anxious and depressed. And it gives me a little bit more control. I really do like it. I thought, sometimes about going off of it. What would that look like? And I don't know, that seems a little scary to me. So if something's working, I think it's great. But for the first few years I was on Lexapro, I felt like, or the first few months, I felt like a really big failure because I couldn't make myself feel what I was feeling on the medication without it. If anybody, is going to a psychiatrist or feels like they're just in a spot where they just can't get themselves out of where they are, talking to a doctor, talking to someone like Stacey Uhrig, who's a trauma coach, is, a great thing to do. But just don't feel like you're alone. I feel like we have talked about mental health more in the past than has ever been talked about in a long time. But again, there are times that you're going to feel depressed, that you're going to feel anxious when there might not even be anything wrong. Like even today, I'm feeling, depressed. I'm just kind of feeling like I'm kind of like floating through life, honestly. And there's really no reason for it other than me, trying to come off of a medication or anything like that. So I just think that, if you ever are feeling this way, to talk to somebody, reach out to somebody, but also just make sure as a reminder that you're not alone, and that it is completely normal. So, and if you're on medication, that you're not failing, that you're doing something for yourself, that's super important. But I think that, life is super hard. And if you're a stay-at-home mom, if you're a working mom, if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you have, a job that's super stressful, these things are super normal. And really self-care is super, super important. And to have boundaries, all these things that, Stacey, again, we just filmed our podcast together. So all these things really come up, that just making sure that you're doing self-care for yourself and making sure that you're not alone and you have someone to talk to, whether it's your partner or your best friend, anything like that. So I just just really wanted to talk about, my journey in mental health, my journey with anxiety, depression, my journey with medication, changing medication, gaining weight, all these things. But I just try to wake up every day and take it as a new day. And if something goes wrong or if something, makes me sad or anything like that, I really just try to take it head on, or I just talk to people that make me feel a little bit better about it. And just surrounding yourself with people who make you happy and make you feel less anxious or less depressed. And if you're feeling these ways and you're hanging out with people or you talk to people who don't help you, then it's time to evaluate the people that you're surrounding yourself with. Because if I didn't have the people surrounding me, I don't think I would be as successful as I am right now. And of course, there are plenty of ups and downs, and I just think it's super important to be aware of your mental health and those around you, and don't be so hard on yourself. But this is, just a short episode where I wanted to share the little bit behind the scenes of my mental health and how I take every day as a new day to work on it, to do better. And something that I've also learned is when you're kind of feeling sad, anxious, depressed, a lot of the time I will feel, again, guilt that I'm feeling this way, but I'm learning to just lean into it. So if you're feeling this way, allow yourself to just have a day. I know that we're all very busy, we have kids, we do this, that kind of stuff, but have your partner or someone take the kids and just allow yourself to have a day and be sad, and tomorrow is going to be a little bit better. So again, thank you for, following Keeping It Juicy. And this episode is brought to you by MC Marketing and Content, which is my business that I own. So we create and manage social media for businesses so that they don't have to do it on their own. A lot of people don't know when to post, what to do in a caption, how to run Facebook ads, and we do all of that for you. So if you ever need any help with your social media, please feel free to reach out to me on Miss Chester at ms.chester_NJ. And as always, don't forget to keep it juicy. Thank you for listening to this episode of Keeping It Juicy. You can find this episode and all the rest on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And as always, don't forget, keep it juicy.